In 1993, a new technology to treat incurable diseases through gene editing called CRISPR was invented. However, in the following years, it was quickly misused to develop dangerous experiments. Back to the present day, on a space station called Athena-1, a laboratory rat was infected with the same CRISP genetic editing, where it killed the entire crew except for Dr. Carey, who informs the control room on Earth about the space station situation while heading towards the escape pod. However, the control room staff on Earth refused to unlock the escape pod, and the CEO of the biotechnology company called Energene forces Carey to retrieve the mutation samples, or she will be left there, with no choice. She then returns to the control room of the doomed ship and manages to grab the 3 samples, but is soon spotted by the monstrous rat. Desperately, she tries to escape and barely manages to enter the escape pod before the rat can catch her, thus leaving Athena-1, which soon after explodes with the rat inside. However, the damage caused by the creature causes the escape pod's window to break, thereby self-destructing as it enters Earth's atmosphere, and consequently killing Carey instantly. On Earth, a man named Davis, a primatologist working at the Wildlife Sanctuary in San Diego, leads Nelson, Amy, and Connor in a gorilla enclosure. Davis tries to interact with the newest member of the group, named Pavel, who still seems quite aggressive, but he manages to calm him down using sign language. Suddenly, an albino gorilla named George appears. Pavel gets a bit stressed, causing Connor to panic and try to run away. Seeing Connor running away, Pavel then chases after him until George knocks him down, saving him from the worst. We realize that he is a great friend of Davis. Despite the incident, George seems to have a great sense of humor and enjoys teasing people. Davis reminds him to be friendly with Pavel because hunters killed his whole family, and he is now an orphaned gorilla. Then he asks George to fist bump him, but instead George flips him off, making the others laugh. But later, he agrees to take care of Pavel, who is now part of the family. That night, after Davis went home, the 3 canisters previously recovered by Carey reach Earth. The first one lands in the gorilla enclosure, releasing gas that sprays George, who was nearby, observing it. Meanwhile, the second one falls in the forest near a pack of wolves, and one of them is exposed to the gas. The last one lands in a river in the national park, where it is swallowed by a crocodile. The next day, Davis is informed about George behaving strangely, as he had ended up in the bear's cage. Upon arriving at the enclosure, he is shocked to see that the bear was brutally killed by George. Davis approaches where George is, and George admits that he was the one who killed the bear and apologizes to Davis. Then the gorilla stands up and, surprisingly, has become much larger than it was the previous day. The team manages to find the container. Davis then picks it up, and it makes him very interested in finding out what it is. Meanwhile, in Chicago, at the Energene company, one of the owners, named Britt, is furious about losing billions of dollars when his sister Claire arrives and tells him to calm down. She seems unaffected by the possible decline of their company, and is not worried about the money lost in the explosion of their space station, as she claims that the mutation is succeeding, which proves that the project and experiment they call Rampage is working. She is also very confident that they still have the project samples that Carey placed in the escape capsule with her, as the report from the American Meteor Society reveals the location of one of the samples, saying that she should immediately contact the private military service to retrieve the container before anyone can track it, and blame her company for illegal experiments. The military team is led by Burke, heading with his team towards Yomi, the place where the second cylinder fell. Upon arrival, Burke reports to Claire that the cylinder is severely damaged and discovers that all the wolves in the area were massacred by another wolf from the pack. Realizing that the remaining wolf is infected, Claire orders Burke to capture it dead or alive. Meanwhile, having heard about the Athena-1 disaster and news of George escaping from the gorilla enclosure, Kate, a former employee of Energene, immediately heads to the sanctuary. Davis studies the results of George's blood and says it makes no sense how his blood has a lethal concentration of growth hormone that could kill him instantly. Then he notices that George is also changing his personality. This could lead to George's death, but Davis says he will find a way. Kate arrives and meets Davis, explaining that the container that landed in George's enclosure is a sample produced when she was a geneticist at Energene. Davis allows her to join the research, and she explains that the pathogen inside the container works by editing George's genes, causing him to grow rapidly and become aggressive. However, she claims to have developed a mutagenic agent that can cure him. Suddenly, George becomes furious and begins to push against the cage until he eventually breaks free. He invades the rooms and breaks through the walls, eventually reaching the outside area where the guests are. When the police arrive and surround him, Davis tries to calm him down and tells the police to lower their weapons. This works, but then a shooter from the helicopter starts firing tranquilizer darts at him until George passes out. Meanwhile, as they travel deeper into the forest, Buck sees the mutant wolf running swiftly among the trees. He shoots it and manages to hit it. They then land to find the dead wolf's body, but upon arrival, they notice the paw print of a giant wolf on the ground, which sends them into a panic. Moments later, The beast begins attacking and taking down Bunker's team members one by one. Seeing their soldiers being killed, Claire and her brother become frightened, and she says they won't make it. After a certain time, we see that only Burke remains and continues the hunt for the beast. He calls for air reinforcements, but the weapons, even the machine gun from a helicopter, do not work against the beast, which has developed bulletproof skin. The beast, transformed into a giant monstrous wolf, has the ability to jump very high in the air and manages to destroy the helicopter, killing all the crew members. Frustrated and cornered, Burke attempts to fight the wolf one last time, but is devoured by the beast. Davis and Kate are arrested and meet Agent Harvey Russell before being taken aboard the plane transporting George. On the plane, Russell questions both of them and talks about Davis's time with the Army Special Forces and the United Nations Anti-Poaching Special Task Force. Then he shows the footage of the 9-meter wolf creature, which frightens Davis. He then reveals that Kate was actually fired from Enerdine 2 years ago because she attempted to steal the company's hard drives, resulting in her being imprisoned for 13 months. This fact leaves Davis disappointed and distrusting her because she lied to him, and she then admits she cannot cure George. In the Enerdine office, Claire recognizes Kate and predicts that she is gathering evidence to harm them, which this means Kate is a threat to them, and they should have eliminated her. Claire reveals that the company has completed the cure for the mutant creatures, called R19, which will stop their growth and reduce their aggression. Then she plans to lure all the mutant creatures to her office using a low-frequency wave signal emitted by a tower, where the military will kill them, giving Claire the opportunity to collect their DNA. She is also confident that George, who is still on the same plane with Kate, will escape and kill her, eliminating her as a threat to the company. She then activates the device, which causes the giant wolf, who had already been terrorizing areas with people, to stop destroying everything around it and start running towards the source of the low-frequency signal, while the crocodile that swallowed the canister is also affected and begins heading towards the tower. As planned, George, even though sedated, suddenly wakes up, breaks out of the cage and starts attacking. The soldiers start shooting at him with guns, but they have no effect, when then one of them accidentally hits some explosives, causing the side of the plane to explode. Just before the plane crashes, Davis manages to put on a parachute, and Kate does the same, soon jumping out. Davis also puts the parachute on Russell, who was unconscious, and jumps out of the plane with him, leaving George inside, who almost managed to grab them. Soon the plane crashes to the ground, and Davis thinks his friend has died. Now on the ground, arriving at the wreckage, Davis realizes that George survived the plane crash and immediately headed towards the northeast. Meanwhile, at the Nerdine company, Claire, using footage from her private satellite, discovers that George survived the crash, and so did Kate. Then, FBI agents arrive with a warrant to conduct a thorough examination of the company's records. Claire wants to pin the blame on Kate, so she tells the FBI agent that Kate is solely responsible for all the chaos that is happening. Davis tells Kate that when he found George, who was hiding from the hunters that killed his parents, Davis and his team fought back against all the hunters who shot at him, killing them all, and thus saving George. Kate then tries to regain Davis's trust by telling him that she was the one who developed the CRISP experiment to cure her brother, but the company Nerdine was secretly using it to build a weaponized DNA. She then tried to destroy it but was imprisoned, and unfortunately her brother died while she was in prison. After hearing this, Davis is moved and decides to work with her again. Thanks to Russell, the three are rescued and taken to Scott Air Force Base. There, Davis sees footage of George and the wolf running together. He then explains that it's impossible for two species, a gorilla and a wolf, to travel in a straight line to the same destination. Kate adds that both must be being called by something, and says that in the research conducted by Energene, they used bat DNA, which developed biosonar communication, meaning they succeeded, and the creatures won't be prevented from reaching the signal's source. Davis and Kate are taken outside by the soldiers, but Davis changes course, and, having been in the military, he easily knocks out the two soldiers. They proceed to take the medical rescue helicopter, and upon arrival, Rousseau appears and assists them, saying it is the least he can do for saving his life, and that they will stay in touch. They quickly escape the base using the helicopter to reach the Nerdine company and get the antidote that can stop the creatures. Meanwhile, the military attempts to stop the beasts with a bombardment, but soon realizes they failed, as the two creatures were unaffected and wiped out all the soldiers. Because of this, the colonel decides to evacuate Chicago, where the beasts are already arriving. Rousseau informs Davis of the orders given, and when he arrives, he notices that the beasts have already invaded the city. The beasts are causing great chaos in the city, and the military is overwhelmed trying to contain the situation. Davis in the helicopter is almost hit by a car, and soon sees George with the wolf causing destruction and deaths wherever they go. At this moment, a brave dog almost meets its end. However, it narrowly escapes thanks to a direct military attack on the creature, which, however, proves ineffective. The wolf has developed a defense on its body, and soon counterattacks the helicopter with large spikes, destroying it. Some moments later, even after using several tanks and helicopters, the colonel, seeing that it will not work, orders his team to prepare the mother of all bombs. This conventional bomb is capable of destroying half of that large city. When the colonel is then quickly notified of something coming from the river, they realize it's the transformed giant crocodile joining the destruction and contributing to the damage in the city. The entire military force is unable to do anything and continues to suffer increasing soldier casualties. The colonel ordered the preparation of the mother of all bombs, but soon Russell tried to intervene, saying that Davis and Kate are going to get the antidote and will need time. However, he completely rejects the suggestion and orders Russell to leave. Meanwhile, the jet carrying the bomb takes off and is headed towards the city. Davis and Kate manage to get inside the Energen Company building and search for the antidote, but are soon spotted by Claire, who is preparing to leave the building. She and her brother go there to corner them, and Kate, after finally finding the antidote, hides one in her jacket as she notices Claire arriving with her armed brother, saying that the cure doesn't return them to normal size. It only removes the aggressive personality. Then they are forced to hand over the antidote to her, where Claire soon takes her brother's gun and shoots Davis in the stomach before heading outside. They head to the top of the building with Kate as a hostage, leaving Davis alone to die. As the three creatures start climbing and destroying the building, just before Claire can take off, George reaches the top, frustrated by the signal, and damages the helicopter, nearly killing Kate. But Davis, who wasn't dead, appears just in time to rescue her. Kate reveals that she managed to hide an antidote, and now they just need to figure out how to give it to George. Meanwhile, George tries to knock down the antenna, and they are confronted by Claire. However, Davis manages to distract her by calling George, and Kate puts an antidote into her bag, which is then grabbed and devoured by George. Meanwhile, Britt, who is already on the ground floor, tries to escape, but is encountered by Russell, who demands he hand over the laptop and the laboratory rat, allowing him to flee afterward. According to this proposal, he complies, and while leaving, he is crushed by the debris continuously falling from the building. While George is feeling the effects of the antidote, Davis and Kate manage to get into the broken helicopter just before the building starts to collapse completely. The beasts caused the building to fall, and Davis, inside the helicopter with Kate, tries his best to keep it airborne when the building hits the ground, as that would be their only chance to survive. After all that destruction, we see that they managed to land safely and survived. George appears amidst the rubble and seems to have returned to normal, looking happy to see Davis again. However, the joy is short-lived because the other two creatures reappear and are still out of control. As the aircraft with the bomb approaches the city, Davis equips himself with a grenade launcher and asks Kate to find a phone and call Russell to cancel the airstrike and bring in medical reinforcements, since there are still civilians and military personnel in the area. Then he goes to face the monsters alongside George, who quickly lands a good hit on the monster crocodile, but is soon attacked by the wolf. Davis starts launching grenades to help his friend who is in trouble. Davis manages to push the wolf back for a moment, then gets the idea to lure it into the monster crocodile's mouth. The idea ends up working, and the monster wolf falls straight into the mouth of the terrifying crocodile, which finally kills it with a death roll, tearing off its head and swallowing it. Kate finally finds Russell, and he grabs a phone from a soldier, which will be used later to cancel the airstrike. Returning to the battlefield, now it's the monster crocodile against George. With all his strength, George is fighting to defeat it, but already very tired and wounded, he starts to lose and gets bitten on the leg. Then Davis, running beneath the monster, spots a weakness in it. He quickly gets the idea to throw a belt of grenades into the creature's ear, which soon explodes and brings it down. However, the crocodile quickly recovers and is about to crush Davis with its terrible tail, when George, at the last second, manages to get in front and save him. But he is soon thrown against a steel bar that ends up piercing his chest. As the crocodile approaches George and starts to attack him brutally, Davis gets the idea to use one of the downed helicopters nearby and starts shooting and firing missiles to save his friend. However, the monster takes no damage and goes after Davis to devour him. Fortunately, George, equipped with a steel rebar, makes a great leap and manages to strike the terrible creature directly in the eyes, finally killing it. The colonel, seeing on the monitor that the monstrous crocodile has finally been killed, orders the cancellation of the airstrike. After that, George, severely injured from the intense fight, starts to collapse and, after saying goodbye to his friend, sadly dies. Then Russell and Kate manage to arrive, and Davis sees how many people they were able to save. However, to his surprise, Davis soon sees that George is still alive, and it was just a prank where he pretended to be dead. They then decide together to help evacuate the civilians from the area, while figuring out where they can take George to live.